Hey everybody, and welcome to the very first A.D.D review where I try to review a game in 10 minutes or less. Today I'm covering Hand of Fate. Hand of Fate is a hybrid roguelike slash action RPG slash deck builder, in which the player builds a set of cards into a deck which is then used to deal out the dungeon floors through which they adventure. A roguelite with progression? Now, the game itself calls it a unique take on roguelike gameplay. But really, the most unique part is that it has progression, although other games have it. But does it have permadeath? Technically, yes, but it's forgiving in that it only kills your character, and you yourself are still playing at the table in front of the dealer. So it saves the last floor that you defeated. So if you beat a boss on a floor, it will always have that floor done. Does that procedural dungeons? Maybe. I don't think so. I haven't got far enough in the game to see that. There are certain type of encounters that have procedural randomness to it. It's that on the store page says it has hundreds of encounters, items, armor, weapons, artifacts, and mysteries to unlock. So you can take that for what you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's procedural generation. Progression and choice. When you die, the only progression that carries over is the cards you've unlocked. What that means is to unlock more cards, you have to complete a run or a floor, and that means you've gone through the floor and defeated the boss. Now, I'm talking about campaign mode, of course. Now, as far as choice, some encounters are dependent upon doing or not doing something in order to unlock the next card in the series. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I'll just say some encounters force you to choose between two or more actions. Sometimes you may have to make a choice, and it may not be the most obvious one, but that's what you need to do. And then there will be some encounters where the dealer will shuffle 4 cards and you need to pick the right one in order to progress. Now, sometimes earlier in the game, they'll be more forgiving and allow you to fail once, and then the next time you have to get a win card. But for the most part, you have to get a win state card every time. And you can follow the cards by watching them, but it's a little bit difficult. In a way, it's pretty much RNG because many people say that they can't follow the cards with their eyes. That's up for debate, but in my opinion, it's kind of like a dice roll, but you have a little bit more say in it since you can actually watch it.
Roaming ever forward, hunting for the truth.
There's some deck building mechanics, so there's strategy in that. Before you even go in the dungeon, you're picking which cards you're going to encounter, so there is some strategy in that. But they force you to choose so many of your equipment cards and so many encounter cards, and that number will go up as you progress through the floors, through the game. Beyond that, you can choose which cards are within that. So you can customize your own adventure before going in to each floor. Each floor has a clear break to the game where you can go back to the table and build your deck again.
Halfway done. Let us continue.
Types of encounters. You'll have NPCs, items you can interact with, combat, shops or merchants, and some other good and bad things I won't spoil for you. Some encounters force you to choose between 2 or more actions. And other times, you'll have to make a choice and pick a card from that the dealer has shuffled, kind of like a dice roll, to unlock the next card in the set. And then other times it's combat. Now, how often is it combat? I'd say about a third or half the time. The devs call this combat action RPG combat, but I'd call it more of an Arkham-style third-person brawler. Upon entering combat, all of the cards the player has collected fly into their hands as fully modeled 3D assets, and combat begins. That's straight from the store page. Also, there's counterattacks, just like in Arkham City or any of the Arkham games. It's not as good. I mean, it's obviously not as fluid as I'd say the Arkham games, but it's pretty close. I mean, it doesn't seem to me like it's clunky or anything. It's still pretty smooth. It feels good. I mean, your character is just a generic guy, but you can see all of the armor and stuff on him, and it looks cool. Which brings me to the weapons. Now, for the weapons in this game, you'll realize it's melee only. There's no ranged weapons, but I personally like that. Your starting weapons are a mace, shield, basic chest armor, boots, maybe some other things. You'll notice that there's the gear and the weapons in this game are all determined by RNG, unless they're bought from a merchant. I'm personally fine with this. It makes it really dynamic and unexpected what's going to happen in each playthrough. The abilities and powers you get, you have like chill effects, speed buff, you get either more damage or some other elemental effect like poison. There's probably more I haven't got to yet. I'm only about halfway through the game. And the abilities have cooldown, not a depleting bar. So you don't have to get like mana potions or anything to get the abilities back. How do the health and food systems work? Well, you lose one food with every one move you make on the board. You can buy food from shops and merchants along the way or gain them as rewards from encounters. And there's no regenerating health within combat. But out of combat on the overworld, if you're hurt, you'll regen HP with every one move on the board, 5 for each move. Now, boss fights. Every boss will have henchmen around him or her. Bosses have special modifiers that affect the whole playthrough. Bosses have special modifiers that affect just when fighting him, just in that combat instance. And let's talk about RNG as a whole. It's a roguelite. Roguelike and then a roguelite. How much RNG does it have? Well, it might have RNG for some of the encounters, but I don't want to spoil anything. I mean, as far as the procedural generation, I can't tell you if it has that. It might. As for the board movement, no RNG there. Movement is always one space per turn. And then instead of a dice roll to determine like if something's gonna happen, it's cards. So that's not really RNG because you can watch the cards and you pick one after the dealer shuffles them. There's a little bit of skill involved. I wouldn't call it RNG. Now, what cards you come across, I would say that's RNG, kind of. I mean, it's limited to what cards you picked before, plus the X number of cards the dealer put in, but it's kind of, it's not really RNG. But what is RNG is how much you gain and lose. How much gains or loss you take at non-combat encounters is somewhat random. And I will say it definitely leans more towards the loss side the further you get into the game. I mean, he gets really hard on you, man. I mean, he does not want you to survive. And that challenge makes it more fun. Now, the reason I say it's somewhat random is because there's one encounter where you encounter a peasant woman, and she says, "Could you give me some food?" Now, if you give her 3 food, you will generally get a better reward than if you gave her 1 food. So that part, I would say, is not an RNG, because what you're giving is influencing how much good you're getting. But on the opposite hand, sometimes you'll just be going through a level and the dealer will usually, once you switch over to the next part of the floor, like you go through a door, he'll just drop something like terrible on you because that's RNG and he's trying to screw you over in the later levels or as you go farther in the game. And that's just cool. So that, I would say, is kind of RNG, but at the same time, you know it's coming. It's like an established rule of the game. Hard to explain, but it's a game where you feel like you know the rules, but at the same time, it's like the rules are that he can screw you over at any time because he's like the dungeon master. So keep that in mind the whole time you're playing this. Happy Halloween, everybody. That was my take on Hand of Fate. It's currently one of my top 5 games that I like to play. It's just a good, really good mix of genres.
A challenge for you, and a token if you succeed.
I don't even really like roguelikes that much, and I still loved it. I feel like I'm playing a tabletop game. But anyways, check it out. It's on the Halloween Steam sale. It's on sale until November 1st.
But it'll be on sale other times.
It ends at about 1 p.m. It's on sale for $8.50 US or your regional equivalent. And a fate. And now I'll leave you with some cool footage.